Hi, everyone, and welcome to Digital Tokens Take Off, how NFTs are unlocking new opportunities in e-commerce. I'm Jess Houlgrave. I'm the Chief of Staff at checkout.com, and this is the second of a series of events that we are running to explore the world of crypto and blockchain and the impact that it's having. I'm delighted to be joined today by four fantastic panelists, and we're going to touch on everything from digital art to how we might track the provenance of goods, and importantly, how brands are now engaging with consumers through the use of NFTs. For those of you who are maybe a little bit more new to the space, NFTs are non-fungible tokens, and I'm sure that our panelists will enlighten us a little bit more about what those are and how those are impacting the world around us as we go through. So welcome. I'm going to start by asking our panelists to introduce themselves. So maybe first, if we could go to Kathy Hackle, who is a tech futurist and the Chief Metaverse Officer at the Futures Intelligence Group. Kathy.
Thanks, Jess, and thanks for inviting me to be part of this panel. Very excited about it. My name is Kathy Hackle. I am, like you said, a tech futurist. I have been working deeply in AR and VR for the past 6 years with companies like HTC Vive, Magic Leap, AWS. I also write for Forbes. I'm a contributor to Forbes, so many people have come across some of the writing and some of the exploration. In my consulting business, I work with Fortune 1000 brands and luxury brands that are interested in entering, whether it is NFTs or virtual goods, and exploring kind of the ideas and the concepts of the metaverse for a longer term vision. I also help several companies with growth strategies like Upland. So yeah, I'm just excited to be here and to represent the ladies. So just thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Excited to have you here and looking forward to hearing some of the stories that I'm sure you've got from all of that work that you do. Mickey, maybe if I could go to you next, introduce yourself. Mickey is the SVP of Partnerships at Dapper Labs.
Yeah, SVP of Platform Partnerships, which includes the Dapper wallet and Flow blockchain. I've been with Dapper about 3.5 years, and I saw pretty early what the space was going to become with CryptoKitties. I've had some success in my career building on platforms, and I felt CryptoKitties was a great showcase of what could be done on a smart contract blockchain or in terms of NFTs, as a platform. So I jumped in pretty early, and here we are.
Amazing, Mickey. Thank you. I remember I was sat on a plane from New York to San Francisco to a crypto conference when CryptoKitties nearly killed the Ethereum blockchain. And when I got off the plane, I had all these hundreds of WhatsApps about what was going on. So amazing to have seen it from there. Patrick, maybe if we could go to you next from Nifty Gateway.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I'm Patrick. I'm the COO at Nifty Gateway. I've been in the blockchain space for about 6 years now, working with crypto exchange infrastructure, regulatory consulting, asset digitization, and now working with Nifty Gateway with NFTs. Really excited, like the other panelists, to see the future for the technology, and I really appreciate the opportunity for you having me on to talk about it today. Thanks.
Thanks so much. And last but not least, maybe Nick, you can introduce yourself and your punk behind you.
Sure. First of all, after hearing Kathy give her intro, I have to upgrade my title. I just do marketing. I don't really do anything else. Nothing with the metaverse, nothing with all this other stuff. But I head up global marketing for TikTok and ByteDance. And this is my first punk. It's a purple hat that a few of us are all enamored with. So we have a little purple hat crew.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nick. So maybe if we can kick off, I'm going to start with art. That's how I first learned about NFTs and the space that obsessed me with blockchain from very early on. Digital art, though, is not something that's new. We've obviously seen it for many years. But I think that the NFT craze has just taken it to a whole new level. Beeple sold an NFT this year for nearly $70 million and actually became the third biggest selling living artist of all time, which is just phenomenal when you think about some of the names that are on that list. Patrick, maybe if I can go to you first, how do you think that the NFTs are changing the dynamics in the world of art? I know that Nifty, you've partnered with Sotheby's, artists like Pack. Tell me about how that's changing the world, both for creators and for also buyers and viewers.
Sure. Yeah. So I think it's actually pretty simple at its core. NFTs, like we all have discussed many times, present an opportunity for ownership, true ownership of digital goods for probably the first time. So what we're seeing is an unprecedented opportunity to own different types of digital media and different types of digital art where it wasn't previously possible. What that means is that we have an awesome opportunity for creators to monetize work that they previously couldn't, that wouldn't be feasible. And then similarly, it means that we have an awesome opportunity as consumers to support the creators and artists that we enjoy, as well as have more accessibility with those works. It's a lot easier for me to buy an NFT, a piece of digital art, than it is to buy a piece of physical art.
And when you think about like who is buying those pieces, do you think that there's a lot of overlap with people who are buying traditional works in auction houses and then also coming on to Nifty to buy the NFT works by Pack or something like that? Do you get the sense that there's a lot of overlap?
Yes and no. I would say there are distinct demographic differences for sure. I think the crowd that we're looking at when we're looking at traditional art collectors might be a little bit older versus a much younger crowd being involved in the digital media, in digital art and in NFT specifically. But at the same time, I think we're seeing a lot of crossover nonetheless, because artists, traditional artists are delving into the NFT space, as a new way to express themselves and as a new creative opportunity. And similarly, I think people who were involved in traditional art collecting are beginning to look at the NFT space and realize that there's a lot of value in digital art. And so I think we're seeing a lot of collectors cross over, and I think that'll continue.
Kathy, obviously you've worked both in kind of the art space, but also a lot with brands. And I think we're noticing now that brands are leveraging NFTs as a way to engage with their audiences and maybe to kind of try and stay relevant with some of the demographics as things are moving so quickly. Talk to me a little bit about how you see some of these luxury brands starting to engage with NFTs. There's probably a bit of overlap there with some of the high-end auction houses, but how are other luxury brands starting to use NFTs?
Yeah, so I work with some of the top luxury brands in the industry. I can't disclose them. But for example, I'll give you an example I can share with Asprey of London. So Asprey has been around since 1781. So it's one of the oldest luxury brands ever out there. And they're going digital. They're thinking NFTs. And I think for brands like that, right, that are legacy brands or, luxury legacy brands, NFTs just make sense, right? The items that they produce are, extremely, coveted and very expensive. And they usually get inherited, like someone passes it on to someone else, et cetera, et cetera. So when you start to think about the utility of the NFT there, from tracing this item is really exciting. When they start to think about digital ownership and the high net worth individuals of today and in the future, they're going to want some type of digital ownership related to some type of item like that. So I think it's really interesting. I think the secondary market as well is interesting for them to be able to in the smart contract be able to add something that allows them to have a cut of the secondary sales in perpetuity, which is really exciting. But yeah, I think with brands, with luxury brands and brands in general that I speak to, is thinking about NFTs, not just as, as a one-off marketing activation, because many of them do try to do something like that. Thinking about the longer term, game and what does this really mean for ownership? And, one of the big conversations I have with brands is, can we turn digital goods, that could be sold as NFT, can we turn digital goods into a new revenue stream? What are the risks? What are the opportunities there? What has to change within the organization for that to happen? Because once you start bringing this to legal, everyone here, I'm sure, has dealt with legal departments. They're like, shutting that down. We're not doing an NFT. And it's a lot of like educating, a lot of negotiating, a lot of like, no, this is an actual legit thing. We really want to do this. It's, it's a smart idea. So yeah, it's a lot of conversations with brands around how do we really look at digital goods and NFTs as something for the longer term, not just a one-off marketing activation, which is always fun. And, it's a good way to get their toes in the water. But I really urge them to look at the longer term, ideas on how this can be used.
I think that's really interesting, because I think that there is this idea, particularly with some of these incredibly well-known brands, of like, how do you engage an audience over years, not just for a day? And I think we've seen it with some music artists, for example, giving NFT owners the right to have sort of first dibs on concerts and things like that. So I think that it's really interesting to see some of these like creative use cases around NFTs and how people can kind of can engage with new audiences.
Can I jump in real quick? I want to.
Yeah, please, Mickey.
Yeah. I think the way these luxury brands, clothing brands, etc., engage audiences in this space will mirror the way they engage audiences in the physical world. An example I like to give is when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, living in Chicago, the social capital a kid my age could capture, the biggest piece of social capital the kid my age would capture would be who has the new Jordans coming back to school from the summer, right? Especially in Chicago. I mean, globally it was true, but in Chicago especially, right? So, August, September rolled around, who's got the Jordans? What do they look like? Oh gosh, I'm jealous, etc. That was me at 8, 9 years old. My son is now 7, and he spends an inordinate amount of time in the digital world. So you can see very quickly where he's more concerned with his digital identity than the actual physical identity. So luxury brands, social capital starts to move into that space where he or the next generation may value what they own in the digital space more than they value what they own in the physical space, which is logical, because my son can reach, in a school, 100 kids at a time max, but in a digital world, you can reach millions if he's got access to that many followers, or the places he plays in the digital world are that large. So the ability to capture social capital in a digital format is much, much greater and larger than you could ever do in a physical format. So you can conceive that the digital Jordans might be, for this generation, might be more valuable than the physical Jordans.
Yeah, just to add, I totally agree, and I love the sneaker analogy. I think the one thing that I've seen in the NFT space that I didn't see in the brand world or in the more traditional art space is the sense of community. So unlike Jordans, where it's all about scarcity and urgency and almost like this competitive nature of who had the latest Jordans or who has the newest ones or who has the laces that are still white and perfectly clean and all that stuff, there's almost this sense of like, if you are an owner, let's say of like Bored Ape Yacht Club or VFriends or CryptoPunks, you immediately have this sense of bond that you otherwise wouldn't have. And you almost recognize these little niche groups popping up over the love of a specific NFT, which I haven't seen in like the physical goods space. I'm not walking around seeing someone with a Chanel bag and going, yo, Chanel crew, right? Like, it doesn't happen. Whereas like you automatically see this whole like purple hat punk craze developed, like purple hat from the hundreds, and it was given to like 50 people who have like a purple hat. So it's this sense of community that I've seen come to life that I hadn't seen before, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, Nick, I'd love to like pick up on that, because I think so. And Kathy, I'm going to come back to you actually in a moment to talk a little bit more about like the metaverse and what NFTs look like in the metaverse. But I recently spent some time in a crypto art museum in the metaverse, and like it was really interesting to see the people who are there and engage with them. So Nick, maybe if we can come to you a little bit and talk about like how people are actually engaging with those NFTs. How are your creators on TikTok engaging with NFTs, and how do you think that trend is going to continue?
Yeah, we're starting to see digital creators come to life. There's a specific creator named FN Mecca, and it's probably one of the first digital creators that has hit 10 million followers on the platform. And you never see the individual, you just see his avatar in TikTok videos in real life settings, which is really fun and fascinating. I think what we're starting to see with TikTok is the way that our algorithm works, it's a content graph and it's not a social graph. So you're getting exposed to a lot more content diversity, and you're discovering a lot of new things. So as an example, some platforms, they connect you based on who you follow. So if you don't already follow these, NFT influencers, you're never going to get exposed to it. But like on our platform, any content that does well gets surfaced to more people through the For You page, and it creates this almost domino effect so that more people then get to see it. So by nature of that, as this whole NFT craze is starting to pick up, creators that don't have a big following are able to be seen by mass audiences and then have a lot more traction for their projects overall. And we're seeing this dynamic where these individuals are now taking that creative license and now, owning their properties via NFTs, and then having this mass community that otherwise wouldn't have been exposed to them, quote unquote, invest in them and actually like become true fans of them through, the NFT space. So that's definitely something that we're starting to see, which is why we're also exploring that world for ourselves.
And is that driving more value to creators? I think one of the things that we've often heard about is how NFTs and crypto maybe is a way to drive value to the people who are creating things rather than just the middleman. And Kathy, you touched on it with this idea of resale royalties as well. Nick, how are your creators responding to that? Are they excited by this opportunity?
Yeah, I think we've lived in an age where people create content for, I can't say exactly what, but let's call it fame for now. So like you see people who post stuff on YouTube and the hope is that they become well-known or they go viral or they monetize that through ad revenue. That's been like this consistent model to date. I think what we're looking at and what we're exploring is how do we shift the balance of ownership out of like the platform's hands and into the hands of the creators themselves? Because if they create a compelling video that takes off and has cultural resonance, they should be able to monetize that, put that up in the secondary market, have ownership over it, and allow fans to celebrate that. So we definitely see a lot of interest in TikTok creators who've tried to do NFTs on their own, but they realize now that there's a lot of value in it being an official TikTok NFT with the music and with like the branding and all the imagery that goes with it that made it viral, because you can't take apart the pieces of what made a viral video go viral. But when you see it all come to life together, it's providing an opportunity for them to actually monetize it, which they're all very interested in, obviously making money. And we're obviously very supportive of them doing that.
And Mickey, at Dapper, obviously you spend a lot of time sort of with your communities, building community experiences. You recently launched NFTs at live games. Tell me about that. How have your customers responded to that?
It's been a tremendous success on multiple levels. You can see through our community, either in the Discord channels, Twitter, overall the feedback of that activation has been tremendous. The response has been tremendous. You can also see it in the data as well. Revenue, engagement, all of that stuff is way up. So, and then more anecdotal evidence, pictures from the event, videos from the event showed huge lines, a lot of people wearing Top Shot shirts, a lot of people actually showing off, opening their packs, etc. But the lines for that, the kiosk at the events kind of said it all. So I don't know the exact numbers or the exact impact, but with all of those data points kind of converging, you can see that it had tremendous impact and the community loved it.
Yeah. Kathy, let's go back to this metaverse. Maybe for some of our viewers who might not be so familiar with it as you are, you can kind of give us a little bit of an overview of what are the latest trends there, but also how are NFTs being incorporated and popping up?
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily going to define it because the definition is still hazy. There's a lot of debate in the industry. I think all of us, our LinkedIn is full of like debate over like this is the right meaning. What I would say is like I think just over the weekend, one of the biggest things in metaverse related news kind of happened was the Ariana Grande concert in Fortnite. Well done, really exciting, lots of engagement. It was, Travis Scott was the beginning. Ariana Grande concert was really, really interesting, was fantastically done. So that's I think one of the things that people were really excited about. And tons of articles saying this, music in the metaverse and etc. I think all of us here on this panel already knew that. We already know, virtual, our digital personas are equal as important as our physical personas, like Mickey mentioned with his son. So that was really exciting. I would say, what is the role of NFTs? And I think, thinking through, and I have to say, Louis Vuitton also launched a game that had NFTs this last week, celebrating the Louis Vuitton's 200 years. And I played it. I had a lot of fun playing it. I don't necessarily think it's a game for everyone. But there's NFTs in there that were created by people and everything. But what is really the role of non-fungible tokens in the metaverse? And I think that in some ways, the end game, NFTs are kind of, and this is what a friend of mine says the end game, NFTs are the end game, like, is about digital ownership. It's about being able to, show what you have and kind of what you own. So, and I said this on LinkedIn just this week. I said, what's in your wallet? Right. I was having a conversation with a good friend about, what do we own? What do we have in our wallets? And as a woman, normally, I normally don't talk about, how much I make or how this or that. But I was having an open conversation with another woman about what was in our crypto wallets. And we're having a great time discussing it. And I started to think about, wow, I mean, everything that I'm putting in here has a meaning to me. It matters to me. I'm invested in it. I'm having fun with it. And I think it's about social capital, like Nikki said. It's about community, like Nick mentioned. It's about art as well. Like what I want to, what do I want to adorn my metaverse world that I will build with, right? What are the things I want to see that have meaning to me? So I think it's about digital ownership. It's about community. I also think it's about taking power back in some ways. In the sense that with creators, being able to like play to earn, or being able to, monetize their communities or monetize their art or monetize what they're doing. Or, I love, for example, the case of how Gary Vaynerchuk used NFTs for VCon and VFriends. I thought that was a fantastic idea and concept of granting access, right? The idea of access through NFTs. I think we're going to see NFTs being used in a whole bunch of different ways as we get further into this convergence of physical and digital. I'm really excited about this kind of like where we're going with the metaverse, but also the crypto side. And I feel that, and I'll get off my soapbox in a second, but I feel that for many people, when they think metaverse, they only think gaming, or they only think virtual reality or things like that. And I think they're missing the point when they don't think blockchain and crypto and NFTs as well. So that's something I'm trying to kind of talk to the XR industry about, is like, don't forget about the blockchain component of this, because it's critical. So,
yeah. Awesome. I think it is, that's a very broad view of the metaverse, which I think for any of us who've spent time engaging with NFT communities and spent time thinking about this, they fit so well together.
And just to add to that, like for me, the concept and the idea that in the metaverse we're all world builders is completely aligned with the concept of NFTs and earning, and monetizing our communities. So,
Patrick, Kathy just left there on the point of like monetizing and earning, and I think that Nifty has been at the center of some of the biggest pieces in terms of value from NFTs. And actually, I think this is also raising questions about like how we define value and like what something is worth and what an NFT might be worth. How do you think about that, and how are some of the artists on your platform thinking about that?
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. To an extent, I think NFTs call into question our traditional or pre-existing views of value. And, through the most simple sense, I think more than the fact that you can own a digital good. And like Kathy and Mickey and Nick were talking about, it allows opportunities to monetize or ascribe ownership to our digital personas and to our digital collections. So from that standpoint, it's a shift in mindset to say, hey, we're ascribing value to things that simply didn't have it before. And for artists, for consumers, at least for as far as Nifty Gateway is concerned on a platform like ours, we are allowing a certain type of liquidity that maybe didn't exist previously. So when we're talking about access, we're talking about people being able to all access the same pool of art or whatever other digital collectible it might be from all around the world. And it's the same price for everybody. It doesn't matter where you come from. And similarly for the creators to be able to put themselves on the same field with everyone else, to an extent, NFTs act as a little bit of an equalizer of value. I can sell my NFT regardless of the fact that I'm from an economically depressed region, and I get the same opportunity as someone who is from a region where the infrastructure to sell their art or to sell their goods might have already been there.
Yeah, I think the whole crypto space, I think, can be an enormous equalizer. And I've had like amazing engagement with artists in South America who would never have had the opportunity to sell to a European audience, for example. And I think it's created some really powerful connections for people as well, sort of bringing that community together. We've talked a little bit about some of the exciting things that are going on, but with any new innovation, there are also a lot of challenges. So I'm going to sort of like switch a couple of questions to that direction next. And Patrick, if I can come back to you and Mickey as well, we talked about this a little bit before we went live. The issue of climate, the biggest issue of our time really naturally is finding its way into every single conversation, and blockchain and NFTs are no exception. How are your communities responding to this challenge, and how are you as organizations responding to it as well?
It's a good question. I mean, frankly, I think something that I've appreciated about the community is that I think that most people are pretty cognizant of the fact that the current systems, the current most popular protocols are probably not as environmentally friendly as they could be. So I think a lot of people in the space acknowledge that and look forward to ways that they can either offset any emissions they might have caused, or look forward to actual infrastructure improvements that will curtail it in the future. So I think we talk a lot about advancements in Ethereum, and we see to hopefully not use proof of work, hopefully use proof of stake, be a little bit more efficient in the future. We also see the prevalence of newer types of blockchains to address some of the issues in the NFT space as well.
Mickey, how about you?
Yeah, we're one of those folks. With our Flow blockchain, we moved off of Ethereum some time ago, built a proof of stake blockchain, and proof of stake by definition is significantly greener or more environmentally friendly than a proof of work blockchain. So we've done a lot to kind of move away from environmentally unfriendly scenarios or technologies, and built our own for many reasons, but none the least of which is the environmental friendliness of the proof of stake blockchain which we launched.
And is that something that that the brands that you're working with are raising as being important to them? How do those conversations come up?
Yeah, look, our goal in this space is to bring a mass market audience to a blockchain. To bring a mass market audience to a blockchain, you need brands, you need artists, you need entertainers to participate, to be interested in it. And given the mass market nature, or how Top Shot brought NFTs into the kind of public consciousness, we're one of the first stops for any of those content providers or influencers or artists to talk to about NFTs, to explore doing business with. So I would say at least 50% of those conversations, we have to talk about the environmental impact of what we're doing versus what other chains or entities are doing, and how we affect the environment, what our stance on the environment is, how our technology is more environmentally friendly than the alternatives, et cetera. So because I'm talking to a lot of those types of folks or those types of companies, it comes up very, very often in my conversations.
Nick, how about this topic with your communities? I think obviously the NFT creators and the TikTok communities, this is a big topic for them. How are you responding to that as an organization as well?
Yeah, I think sustainability is something that's top of mind for everybody, whether you're in the NFT space or not. I think we all recognize the impact that's been caused by people to the climate, and we all want to figure out what we can do with regards to that. I think the space is new and there isn't as much education. So the first thing is just sort of educating people on the impact of this, because I don't think the common person who's buying an NFT today thinks about that impact on like the whole supply chain of how that comes to life. So the first thing that we're looking at is just raising awareness and sharing and educating people on what's happening. We're also looking at companies, I think like TerraWolf, we're looking at how to mine things a little bit more efficiently, at the same time looking at areas that these folks have been talking about, how you can look at different blockchains that are creating a more sustainable, future for folks. And then the other point that Mickey made is interesting is nobody wants to see a world devoid of the brands they love. And I think in order to have inherent buy-in from the community, you need to have those elements. It's one reason why I think Tom Sachs' Rocket Factory is interesting, because of all like the inclusion of brands that people love and the ones that have like a cult following, they're all being brought to life in this really fun NFT project. And at the end of the day, I think we all, whether it's Jordans when you were 7 or 8 or the NBA today or whatever it is, like people love and have an attachment to brands, and keeping them a part of this and having them feel good and invested in the community is something that's good for everybody overall.
Thanks, Nick. What about some of the other challenges that are facing the NFT space at the moment, and maybe some of the other opportunities as well? Kathy, what are you talking about with some of the people that you work with?
Well, I would say, and I mentioned this at the beginning, is a lot of education within the organization, so within the brand. At this point, many of the people, in legal or finance have probably come across the term NFT, but there's still a lot of education that needs to go in, right? When you actually, and I'm actually, when I work with brands, several of them, I've created tools for them to actually go and evangelize this within their org for anyone to understand, because I think that's critical. It's getting that buy-in from everyone. So I think that's, some of the challenges around there, the environmental challenges as well, depending on where they're deploying those NFTs, a lot of that education. Another one is the lack of long-term thinking and just seeing this as a one-off activation. That's another thing. It's great. Like I said, if you want to do a one-off, okay, go do it. That's great. But really think about what is the long game here? What are you really trying to accomplish? What are you selling, right? What are you selling? But it's really more about connecting and partnering with the community more so than just selling. So definitely those are some of the challenges. I mean, as opportunities, it's a whole new world. It's a whole new way to connect with with newer generations. It's a whole new way of building, loyalty for your brand, right? A lot of the brands, many brands in our physical world might not translate in the same way they do in the virtual world. So we're going to see a shift and a change, I think, as to what are going to be the brands. Like, we're always going to have the Gucci. We're always going to have those. Like, some of those are always going to kind of like continue with us. But there's going to be a rise of different brands that are metaverse native, right? That are created in the metaverse and that become those Coco Chanels of the future. So I think, all of us here working on this are part of that beginning. And we're starting to see that. So those are definitely some of the challenges, but also some of the opportunities. As well as kind of, we're all building this together, and no one even no futurist can predict the future, but I think we can kind of see where things are going, and it's a really exciting time to build, right? It's about world building and how does a brand become a brand in the metaverse. I think that's kind of a really interesting conversation.
Thanks. Maybe Patrick, I'd love to hear some of the forward-thinking opportunities that you're seeing at Nifty and what's coming your way.
Sure. Yeah. So I think, like we had mentioned before, I think it's a little bit of a challenge for companies to figure out exactly what's going on in the space in general. So new, right? And for businesses, for brands, and for creators as well, I think. From what we've seen from an artistic perspective, like I mentioned before, this presents a new opportunity that probably didn't exist previously. So on the art side, we're seeing a ton of new types of art that I don't think probably would have existed if not for this opportunity. We're seeing blends of different types of media, from music to visual performance art to 3D animation to even including video games. Basically, the traditional convention of what we might have considered is art has been to an extent broken down by this opportunity. And I think somebody mentioned it before, but it's a little bit of sort of taking back power to an extent, in that people who consume this feel like they can decide from a, maybe in contrast to a system before for traditional art collecting that felt a little bit tough to break into, people can decide what is valuable. So, we are seeing new types of media come to life that, I don't think previously would have. That's probably the most exciting stuff that we see. Beyond that, I'd say some of the newer use cases for technology specific to art. So a great example is, NFT art pieces that change based on certain variables, based on the geography of the holder, based on the time of day, based on certain other factors that the creator has in store, fun surprises for the user, or other use cases for that NFT in games or other media down the road. So, honestly, greenfield's ahead. Really excited to see some of what our creators are going to do with the opportunity NFTs afford them.
Yeah, it's I think for me, one of the most interesting things in art is like the kinds of art that you've been able to own historically have been a subset of what art is. And you can go to a museum and you can go to a performance and see all these different kinds of art, but you've never been able to own it. And now that's broken, and you can have a completely different relationship with artists because you can own a piece of performance art, and you can, actually NFTs can become a piece of performance art. And I think the pack auction is a great example of that. In and of itself was just this incredible piece of art, as well as being the sale of pieces of art. It was amazing to watch.
Jess, can I add something briefly to that? And I think it's also thinking about the extension of the NFT in the physical world as well. When you start to see immersive theater and immersive entertainment kind of taking off, like Star Wars, like Disney announcing the Star Wars immersive hotel. It's a 2-day, I think it's 2-day adventure for 2 people. It's like $5,000. But I'm actually advising behind the scenes a company working with like really large IP, very comparable, and they're thinking about how do they integrate NFTs into these immersive entertainment experiences, so that the NFT is not only something they unlock in the physical space, but also something that has transcendence in a virtual world. So I think this is definitely a trend that you're going to start to see more increasing. Once the pandemic, once we're over, kind of things that are happening right now. But I think that integration with physical, kind of like what Dapper Labs is doing with live NFTs, but in a broader, bigger, entertainment arena, I think is going to be really exciting.
I think that the pandemic, actually, Kathy, I think is a really interesting topic in this case, because for me, it feels like everybody's spent a lot of time in the digital world over the last 18 months, maybe more so than they might have done otherwise. And so maybe one of the silver linings of this is a bit of an acceleration in some of the innovation that we're seeing in this space, just by virtue of the fact that we're all spending that much more time online because we haven't been out in the world. Mickey, what about you? What's coming up for Dapper over the next little while, and what are you really excited about?
I'm excited about everything. I want to make a point here, because a few folks on the panel have touched on it. I think Patrick said this is like a shift in mindset, and people are coming into the space with a different mindset, buying owning digital items for the first time. I don't really think this is that big a shift in mindset. I think people will be surprised how quickly this space takes off from here. So, for example, we take for granted that people in the physical world pay millions of dollars for sports cards. We take for granted that people in the physical world will spend tens of millions on Van Gogh or some of their other famous artists. Why do they do that? No one else, that's just taken for granted. That just is what it is. Why does someone pay $1 million for a picture of a sports icon on a piece of cardboard? If you think about it, it doesn't make that much sense. It doesn't make any more sense than what we're doing here. And I would also say that the physical nature of things is overrated. I date myself on a lot of these examples, but there was a time that I remember very well in my life where it was inconceivable and really weird to not have a physical picture. I take a photo, I want it on my wall, I want a frame, I have my pack of photos that I go through and I touch and I feel and I look at. Overnight, that became the dumbest concept in the world, and everything just moved digitally onto your phone. That could easily happen with ownership. I mean, I don't think physical ownership will always remain, but to think that digital ownership and what we're doing in this space is not going to accelerate, you would have to ignore a lot of historical parallels to think that was not true.
Yeah, completely. Nick?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's true. I remember someone used to ask, if your house was on fire, what's the one thing you're grabbing? And everyone used to say photo albums. Like, I'm going to grab the family photo album. You wouldn't even think twice about leaving that behind now, because you have it all digital and it's like in the cloud and it's, out there in the world. So I definitely agree. I think we're probably the last generation that feels a tie to like the physical good. I assume my kids, when they grow up, they're going to ask me why I paid an artist to make this on an actual like canvas, when they're like, but Dad, you have it in like digital format. Like, why would you need this? That's just a waste of space. So I definitely think there's going to be a shift, and we're probably that final generation that's going to be tethered to physical goods. But I actually love the innovation that's coming to life between the physical and the real world. And Patrick mentioned like dynamic NFTs and things that change on the fly because of certain behaviors or mechanics. And at the same time, we're exploring how you provide some real world utility to NFT holders in the future when we do have NFTs through like once in a lifetime experiences that only a brand like TikTok can provide. So I think there's still a lot of innovation. There's still probably this like tension, but in time it's going to make that full shift where it'll be like the family photo album. Like, why would you need to grab that?
And if we want to talk about environmental impact, I mean, we're saving a lot of trees moving it digitally, right? Think about, books is another example. Kindle, et cetera, move books digitally than physically. In my era, you'd want a bookshelf filled with books, but that's not necessarily the case anymore.
Well, and in fashion, to that point, which obviously, very important. I think Greta was talking about that this week with her cover in Vogue. But what I would say is also, as a futurist, I also think of like what's coming next. What's, once we have wearables, once we're seeing things, and I've been able to see some of the things that are coming, the idea that I'm going to be able to wear whatever, but my virtual fashion is going to be able to do things that it can't do in the real world. So I agree with you, Mickey, like physical is overrated, because that digital layer that will be put on the physical world will allow my fashion to do things it cannot do in real life. And that's really exciting for me. Like I could see my kids being like, oh, I'm going to choose this, this outfit today to, I'm going to choose this lens or this filter or whatever. And my outfit's going to do this. And my Air Jordans are going to do this. And, all those sorts of things. So kids
only partially live in the physical world. They live in TikTok. They live in Roblox.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that ownership will be transferred probably overnight.
And to that point, like my son, he had a birthday party for a friend in Roblox, and he came and said, Mom, can you get me this avatar? Because I want to show up to his birthday wearing this. Right.
100%. And like, even for folks in our generation, how many Twitter profiles have been updated to feature punks or Bored Apes, and how many social handle, profile pictures have now been overrun with digital avatars that kind of look like some folks, and sometimes it's just like a random character that you kind of, just enjoy or love. Like we've seen that transition already start to take place with, other folks too.
What's interesting about the Twitter point is, the criticism or pushback you get from people that don't understand the space is it's just a JPEG. What is interesting is that you don't see a lot of Twitter folks changing their avatar to something they don't own. Right? They could, but they don't, because there's like the checks and balances. They'll get called out, they'll get chastised. It's not going to go well for them. So I find that fascinating, honestly.
I agree, because that was sort of the comment that everyone said, like, you could just make a copy of it, or I could just take that and then make it my profile. But I think that fear of getting called out and sort of embarrassed is kind of putting people in check. So you really are only displaying the things you own. And in short time, platforms will probably allow you to have a digital shelf to show off all of your digital goods. And you'll be able to like actually have like a whole series of things that you could, bring to life without question.
Is that a teaser to what TikTok's thinking about?
I'm thinking about a lot of things, but I wouldn't say that we're necessarily developing that, but it would make sense.
Sending ideas to your product team, Nick. I like it. So we have a few minutes left, and I'd love to give our panelists a few kind of quick fire questions. So I guess first up, like, what's your favorite NFT that you own, and what would you love to own if you don't already? Let's go to Kathy.
So definitely, I got in this weekend in Fluff World and got one of the Fluff World, and I like the roadmap quite a bit. So happy about that. World of Women, I also like that. And what do I wish I owned? I was late to CryptoPunks. I was late to Bored Ape. I have 2 V friends, so I'm thinking of trading maybe 1 V friend for a Bored Ape. I'm not sure, or a Meebit. So yeah, kind of figuring that out.
Thanks, Kathy. Mickey?
My favorite NFT that I own is my Hollow MMX Zion Williamson NBA Top Shot NFT. What I really wish I owned CryptoPunks. It's a lot of it's because I should have known better, because I've been in the space 3.5 years and I could have picked them up on the cheap a long time ago. But I'm having some major CryptoPunks FOMO.
Patrick, what about you?
Sure, yeah. My favorite NFT that I own is probably one of my Pizza Punks. It's a series from John Bergerman. And then what I would like to own, actually, I don't have anything from Mad Dog Jones. He's one of my favorite artists. Love his work. Haven't been able to get one yet, so it's on the list for next.
Yeah, I think I got honestly just very lucky because Gary V called me out of the blue months ago and literally just said, "What are you doing right now?" And I was just like, "Well, I have a bunch of meetings. It's in the middle of the week." He said, "Cancel all your meetings." I was like, "What? I can't cancel my meetings." He's like, "You need to cancel all your meetings right now and figure out how to convert as much cash as you can into Ethereum." Literally this instant. And I remember thinking to myself, like, that makes no sense, but yeah, I'll go along with it. So I literally canceled my meetings for that day and then went and just tried to figure out, like everyone else, how to convert cash into Ethereum. And as soon as I had enough, he said, "Go buy as many punks as you can." So then I went out and I bought like a dozen punks at the time, and then started the fall like really like in love with the ones that I had, and it almost had stories of their own, and it created this community around like the purple hats and all these different things. And then when he launched VFriends, the utility behind it and the access to VCon and all these other things made it also one of my favorite projects. So I definitely went with punks and then Meebits by default, as well as VFriends over the last 6 months.
I have one punk, and I have I think my favorite might be a CryptoKitty that got sent to me in the very early days and is probably the first NFT that I own, and I still have it. So, and I recently got a digital screen at home as well that I can put some NFTs on. Maybe that's also showing my age, the need to have them in the physical form rather than just in the digital world.
That's part of the beauty of it. It can go with you. You can bring your Beeple to your Palm Springs house, to your hotel in New York. It just goes along with you instead of, you can actually show it. No one shows the Van Gogh in their house because it's in the safe somewhere. But with a digital art at that level, it can just be on your screen. It's great.
Yeah, or even worse, it's at a Freeport somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes. When I worked in the art world, I knew of people who had fakes of the real thing to put on the walls because they wanted to show the fake, and it was too risky to have the real one on your dining room wall.
The JPEG.
Yeah, exactly. Just the JPEG, the JPEG version of the Van Gogh. With 2 minutes left, I guess maybe we'll just do one quick fire round again. And I guess what would be the craziest thing that you've seen happening in the metaverse or in the NFT world? Kathy, let's go around again.
I wrote a whole article in Forbes about weird NFTs, so definitely go read that. But I would say is my friend Jason Festa has 34 squares tattooed on his back, and he's selling each square on the blockchain. So there you go. Pretty weird.
Can own a square. Great. Mickey?
I don't know about weird. Transformative, interesting is there's a lot of ideas around how to securitize rights to things. Think about an artist's new album, right? And how to sell rights to that through NFTs directly to an audience. Very interesting stuff.
Nick?
Yeah, nothing is weird to me anymore, but I do like some of the projects like I forget what it's called right now, but like the horse race one where you can actually then like breed them, and then they have
Zed-run.
like Zed-run, yeah, and like different attributes. Like I think it's interesting to think that the NFT you buy, it's not just static. It can actually create like a whole lineage of like future NFTs that then have different attributes and characteristics, which then mimics like the real world. I think that's very interesting.
Awesome. And finally, Patrick.
Sure, yeah. Maybe it's something that I think is actually pretty funny and a pretty great series, but probably the weirdest popular NFT I've seen is the Pickles. The Pickle series, just as a concept, is kind of weird. I think it's hilarious and I really like them, but yeah, definitely a strange NFT, I would say.
Amazing. Thank you so much to everyone, to all our viewers at home, and also to the panelists. I really enjoyed our conversation. I could go on forever. We're going to send our panelists to check out NFT after this, and so maybe that will add to your collection. But thank you again. For anybody at home, the next of our crypto series is going to be on September 30th, where we have a whole nother round of great panelists and great topics lined up. So please join us for that. And please thank you again to all our speakers for spending time with us today.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.